Hello. In this video, we'll see some of the tricky questions on composition scheme, section 10 of the CGST Act. Let's see. The first question. Can a person engage in a supply of exempt as well as taxable goods opt for composition scheme under GST? Let's go one step back. Suppose a person is engaged in supply of only exempt goods or only exempt service, exclusive. There is no need for that person to do the registration under GST. Where is a question of composition scheme? See section 22, 23, 24 of the CGST Act. Here the question is that the person is engaged in exempt as well as taxable goods. Can he opt for composition scheme? He can opt for composition scheme. There is no restriction. So the person who is engaged in a supply of exempt as well as taxable goods or services, he can opt for composition scheme. No problem. But let's have a following question to this. That 1% GST liability is to be calculated on what amount? Total turnover or only on taxable turnover? In case of manufacturer, that 1% GST liability is to be calculated on total turnover, that is taxable plus exempt supplies. And in case of a dealer, trader who is purchasing goods, selling the goods, that 1% GST liability is to be calculated only on taxable turnover. Take an example of departmental store. He supplies many goods which is taxable. In addition to that, he is supplying loose rice, unbranded wheat. These are exempt supply. The GST liability is to be calculated only on taxable turnover and not on exempt supply in case of trader. Okay, let's go to the next question. Can a registered person having interest income eligible for composition scheme? What is interest income? Is a exempt supplies. He can opt for composition scheme. Yes, he can opt for composition scheme no matter how much is the interest income. He can opt for composition scheme for calculation of the limit of 1.5 crore in the preceding financial year. The turnover should be less than 1.5 crore. In computation of that, the interest income exempt supply is not to be computed, is not to be added. So how much is the interest income? No matters. That is not to be considered in computing the eligibility criteria of 1.5 crore while calculating the aggregate turnover for the purpose of computing the eligibility of 1.5 crore. Okay. Let's go to the last question. Can a registered person engage in supply of non-taxable goods opt for composition scheme? Non-taxable supply means supply of petrol, petroleum products, natural gas, etc. There is a supply, but it is not leviable to tax. There is no GST. They are outside the purview of GST. You cannot opt for composition scheme. That is not allowed. For let's take an example that there is a person who is having petrol pump, selling petrol of worth of rupees 10 crores in a last financial year, and he sells lubricant oil of 1 crore. Can he opt for composition scheme? He cannot opt. Whether he needs to do the GST registration, let's take one step back. Whether he can do whether he required to do the GST registration? Yes, he is required to do the GST registration. Non-taxable supply is to be included in computing the aggregate turnover as per section 2 subsection clause C 6. However, uh, however, for the purpose of composition scheme, he is not eligible because he is engaged in a supply of non-taxable goods. Okay. These are my contact details. If you are having any questions relating to GST, you can contact me. Thank you.